think you're a fascinating guy. And you've trained hundreds of personal trainers in your time.
Yeah, over the last 15 years or so, I suppose, I've been a trainer of trainers.
Fantastic. You look at people's nutritional habits, their activity levels. You also have what I think is a unique way of looking at things, which is the psychology of change. In other words, is someone actually ready and committed to making that shift? And you've got ways of measuring that, which I think is particularly
with psychometric testing,
fantastic. You're also a rugby fan?
Big time. I used to play at a reasonable level.
Good.
Getting too old for that now.
Are you ever too old? Sports enthusiast? You also play saxophone, according to your website.
Yeah, well, badly. My wife would say very badly, but I think I'm all right. I'm a bit of a musician. I used to play flute and clarinet and tenor horn.
You can keep a beat. Fantastic. Lecturer at Bath University in Cardiff, Metropolitan?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'd like to kick this off by asking you, why nutrition? Why health? Why sport? Why people taking care of the physical body? What initially drove you to that industry?
It's a kind of diverse route to get there. Really. I started out working as a personal trainer, worked with clients for years, and the one thing I always felt I was doing was blagging it with nutrition. It's like, I'd read an article in a magazine, I'd be like, "Oh, I tell my client that sounds good," and I kind of reached the point somewhere where I thought, do you know what, this really isn't acceptable. I'm going to get found out if I don't keep it. So I kind of looked around for what courses were available, and it really hasn't changed much in the leisure industry, interestingly, over 20 years. You can do the 2, 3, 4 day courses, or you do a degree, and there really is no middle ground. And so I thought, okay, I'll do a degree. So went to Cardiff, started my degree, did some training in the evenings to kind of earn income. And the fascinating thing for me was I'd come at it from the point of view of, it would just be nice to have the nutrition knowledge so that I can help my clients. A good year into the degree, and I'm thinking, I love nutrition way more than I do personal training. It was like one of those moments where you think, I've really found something that I'm passionate about here. So I finished my degree, came out, went back into the leisure industry, this time managing gyms. So I managed the city centre gym in Cardiff. Then I managed a very upmarket gym for the Savoy Group in the Cotswolds, leisure club there that had a lot of celebrities. And then I was refurbishing the whole gym actually, and I'd won a contract to have like all this new kit and everything. Went up to the Leisure Industry World Show to do the big check signing and handover, the publicity bit. And somebody from one training company there, I just wandered on their stand, I was killing time. And they said, have you ever thought about teaching, training? And I'm like, not really, not with my background. And they said, well, with your background, you're perfect because you've got the personal training aspect. You've now got the academic knowledge. You'd be perfect. And I thought, I'd never thought about doing it. And it was like one of those moments like, maybe I should. Maybe I wandered onto this stand for a reason. I don't know. I went back to my boss. I always remember it. Went back the same day and I said, I'm putting my notice in. And he went, you've just been up to Leisure Industry World with this huge contract. You've convinced us to redo the whole gym, and now you're quitting. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to switch tack, as it were. Started working for Future Fit, wrote all their nutrition courses, and that's where my PhD came out of, because I was training trainers week on week, keeping in touch with lots of them, and they were coming back to me going, this really works, this is great. And I'm thinking, it's not rocket science, I'm just teaching you sound nutrition and getting people active and changing their lifestyles. And so I said to the company, I said, do you know what, it'd be really useful if we could research this as we had some data to show that this does work. And so they sponsored me to basically do my research. And so that's really where the whole system developed from. It was this, we know it works, why does it work? And then the big question out of that was, well, we know it's nutrition, we know it's activity stroke exercise, but what's the bit that's missing? And that was the psychology bit.
Okay.
And so that's really where a lot of my research was within my PhD, was the model for change and how you find out whether somebody's really ready to do it. Because that was the interesting thing from the feedback we had initially from trainers, was some clients will say they want to lose weight, but we never get results with them. And it was like, well, why is that? And
they are going to the gym, they're doing the work, they're doing the exercise.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they buy into it, they've paid their membership, they're being told by the gym instructor what to do, and yet they're not getting the results. And so what is it they're doing, or what is it about them that maybe stops them getting those results?
And what is it?
And it's the psychology of change. These two psychologists, Protachka and Di Clementi, They initially did their research in smoking behaviour. And what they found was people move through stages when they're trying to stop smoking. And so you'll get pre-contemplators, and so they're people that they're just not thinking about it. They're not interested, and you could tell them till you're blue in the face about the illness and how it'll kill them and blah, blah.
All the pain, all the statistics, all the horror
everything.
stuff.
All the horror stories we see, you're putting tarry lungs on cigarette packets. And doctors and nurses, well, they're some of the biggest smokers. So if it's not going to put them off, I'm sure it's not going to put off the general public. So a pre-contemplator, if they do come to you, they've most probably been sent by someone else. And I have had a situation where a wife's been sent by the husband. And when you kind of start to talk to her about what was going on, it was like she didn't really want to be there, but she felt obliged to be there. So peer pressure will often push people that way. You then get contemplation, and when somebody moves into contemplation, they're now starting to think about, well, do I want to do this? And there's lots of little voices going, yeah, you do. But there's equally as many on the other side that shouting equally as loud, no, you don't. And so we call this pros and cons. And whenever we make any decision in life, even if it's just crossing the road, at a subconscious level, we do the pros and cons. And if the pros outweigh our cons, we make the action, or we move to that action. But if the cons are outweighed, well, then we won't. And so it appears that you can apply this in weight management. And Janice and Mann, who came up with the decision-making process, said that we do this with all things in life, and they found a way of testing it in terms of psychometric testing. And so I've now got a batch of psychometric tests, and all that a psychometric test does, it almost measures your subconscious. Because, as I say, you could ask somebody and they go, oh yeah, I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Because society says actually that's the right thing to say. But if you were to ask the question a different way, do you think you can lose weight? Then you might get a very different answer. So,
is the test a verbal test, a written test?
That's a written test.
Okay.
And I think that's the beauty of it, because you sit down, you can do it in your own time, you can do it online. It takes you about 30, 40 minutes. And I always say to people, lock yourself away somewhere, tell whoever it is needs to be told not to disturb you for 40 minutes. Sit there, do not try and outthink the test. Some of the questions are quite inane, and some of them almost seem to repeat, but that's the whole point of a psychometric test. It's kind of asking the same question 6 ways round to see if we get a similar answer. And I just say to them, don't overthink it. Just go with your gut feeling every time.
So hang on, you've actually got a way where you can have someone self-assess themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and it will reveal whether they are at the point of making a commitment and making a change, or whether they're not.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
And we know it works because the way we found this out, the batch of tests that I use, in the first, the pilot phase of my research, I had 56 trainers across the UK, some of these guys that I taught, and girls for that matter, actually over the years. And I said to them, if you've just taken on a client for weight management, can you get them to complete this batch of tests? They did that. And then we followed up all the guys that did the test, regardless of whether they stayed with the trainer, whether they lost weight, whatever. 12 weeks down the line or so, we followed them up and said, can you just redo the tests for us? And what was fascinating when I looked at the data was there was a very clear cut-off point where you could say, I bet these are the guys that lost weight, and I bet these are the guys that dropped out the program. And sure enough, when we went back, night and day, that's what it was. And so the second phase of the research, I then recruited a whole batch of trainers, 20 odd trainers, trained them on how to deliver these tests. And I said to them, you've got to test everybody with this, but they must meet this criteria, otherwise you can't take them on. So there was a cut-off point. You had to kind of meet that, kind of come up to the mark, as it were. They did that. They then trained the clients that met the criteria for 12 weeks, and at the end of it, that's where the 86% success rate comes from.
So you can actually predict when someone's actually done the test whether or not there's any point in them undertaking a program.
Yeah, because because I know I can do that now, I actually do feel it's actually unethical to take on someone.
Gentlemen, everything okay?
Everything's great.
Fine,
Thank you very much.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually think it's unethical to take somebody on if you know that you're not going to succeed. You're wasting my time, I'm wasting your time, and I'm wasting your money. And so I firmly believe that we should start screening people to find out where they're at. It does raise a big ethical issue, because if within the NHS, if we're going to say, right, that's the case, that's the way this works, and it's not coincidental this, because I've repeated this in New Zealand. So it works across different cultures. So there's a different common theme there in terms of, oh yeah, but that was a one-off result. Maybe it would never happen again. Well, we've tried it around the other side of the world and it happened again. So it's not a coincidence. But the big ethical question then becomes, well, okay, if we know that, so if every GP now starts going, right, do these tests, let's see where you're at, what is that GP going to do with the ones that don't meet the criteria? Because ethically, you can't go, you're not ready to lose weight, I'm rubbing my hands here. And that's where we need the research now.
What will you suggest happens with the guys who you know, their score?
What I say to my trainers is, I say, tell them where they're at, because it's a number of tests. You've got the model, the stage of change test, so that will tell them what stage of change they're in. The decisional balance test will tell them where the decisional balance is, so they'll know whether they've got more pros or more cons, or whether they're close. So that will tell them. And also one of the other tests tells you the processes of change. So it gives the trainer a good idea of how that person learns and what processes they're going to use as part of their change behaviour. So some people will respond very well to, basically, excuse my French, a kick up the butt. Other people, you're going to have to be softly. Other people will respond to arm around the shoulders, I'm going to walk you through this. Others want a load of information. So we all learn, we all use different processes. So you're kind of armed with all that information. And I say, well, if they don't meet the criteria, based on what you already know, talk them through where they're at, and then give them a load of information about nutrition in general and health. Get them to go away, read it for a month or so, take it on board, have a think about where they're at, think through what their reasons were maybe coming to do the test in the first place, and then just retest them in a month's time and see if anything's shifted.
They're not written off.
Oh God, no. That would, as I say, that would be totally unethical to go, you're not ready, bye. It's like, I'm only in for the money, I want a result. It's like, no, you can't do that.
So it's readiness to change, which means not necessarily now, but potentially something.
Yeah, hopefully you can move them, and what moves somebody to that point, that most probably is a research question in itself again. Is it a bit more knowledge, a bit more understanding? Is it a bit more support? It'll be different for everybody. Yeah. And it's one of the big problems with diet in general. What works for Joe Blogs doesn't work for Jim Blogs.
So it's an individual thing?
Totally.
Okay.
That's why no diet will ever work. And it's interesting that a really big study from the Journal of the American Medical Association has most recently come out and said, do you know what? We should stop researching diet. We've researched every variation on a theme, you know, high protein, high carb, low protein, high fat, different fats. And all we know is they all get some type of result, but the ones, the good studies that we've been able to follow up 5 years down the track, the average weight loss is about 1 kilogram. And that's in the people that are successful. That's not taking account of the people that aren't successful. So if that's the best we can do with 20 years of research, possibly we should be investing somewhere else. And what the Journal of American Medical Association have said is we need to invest a lot more in lifestyle change. How do people make lifestyle changes? And I think that's the big challenge for us now with the obesity epidemic.
So what does work when somebody changes successfully and they get a result and it's at the lifestyle change level? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What does that look like? What would I have to be doing differently in my day?
The language I look for in my clients is, and the way that the Lean Man system works, because it's most probably easy to explain that, every week you keep 3 food diaries, 3 activity diaries. And every week you do a learning module online, because I want people at the end of the system to, as I explained to a possible new client last night, I said by the end of 12 weeks, I want to be able to kick you out the door and never see you again, because you know what you're doing.
In the nicest possible way.
I says, that is my goal in life. I don't want to see you again. And she's like, oh, it's a bit. I said, I don't mean it too literally, but that's really what we're aiming for. And so you keep these food diaries and activity diaries, and then I sit down with them then, and we do the consultation. It's like, okay, you need this level of input in terms of nutrition because you've got this level of activity. How are we going to make that diet match up? And we'll look at her overall diet or his overall diet and say, what about if we change this for this and this for this? So just a couple of changes, not drastic, huge changes, because that's what you normally see on a diet. You start your new diet plan, whatever it might be, and it's, oh, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, that's bad for you, this is good for you, you need to eat loads of them, you need to eat at this time, blah, blah, blah.
It's too radical.
Yeah, and people will do that for a few weeks, but the way I always describe it is, we start out here, and week by week, and then we hit this point, and there's dietary failure at that point. I said, so I want to flip that on its head. I want to start narrow and build on success. And so they make those few changes. The next week, when they come back to me, how's that going? Now, if I hear things like, oh, do you know what? That was dead easy. I don't really notice I'm doing that. That to me says there's a pretty good chance you'll keep doing it then. If they're saying to me, oh, it was a nose, I couldn't do it most days, then to me that says, well, that's not a change that's going to work for you. And yes, they might not end up with the perfect diet, but if they end up with a better diet and it's giving them results, and I think the other thing that people have to buy into, and generally if you're ready to change, you will buy into it, is it's a long-term deal. This is not a quick fix. There is no quick fix. And the way I always describe it to people is, if it takes this far up a mountain, it has to take the same back down if you want to come down safely. You can jump off the mountain, but that will hurt you. Well, that's your quick fix diet. Jumping off the mountain is the equivalent. So if you want to walk back down the other side, well, it's been a 10, 20 year journey up. You kind of got to accept it might be a similar length down. You really should start talking in terms of years, not in terms of days and weeks. You're not going to change a 40-year-old businessman's habits overnight. It's a long-term deal. So I think that realisation that this is going to take a while is actually quite a big buy-in. And if you can get that, then you kind of know you're on the right track.
So we were talking earlier on off camera about people like cure rather than prevention. People like fast, convenient, you know, easy, shortcut. What it sounds to me is what you're talking about is that ain't going to work. It has to be a fundamental kind of core change in the way people eat, the way people move, the way people think, and that is a longer deal.
Yeah.
So you're going to get objections to that.
Oh, for sure.
How would you answer those objections?
Well, often, and you're right, people say, yeah, but this magazine said I can lose half a stone in 6 weeks or a couple of weeks or whatever, or if I drink this, the weight gets burnt, or this burns fat. And it's like, first thing I say to them is, if any of these products worked, everybody in the NHS would be prescribing it. We wouldn't have an obesity epidemic. Have we got an obesity epidemic? Yeah. Okay, so there's your first thing. These products do not work. The next thing is, can you get... Yes, you can lose weight quick, but the key thing in that sentence is weight. And actually, you're not bothered about being overweight. And they're like, oh, yes, I am. I said, no, you're not. I said, you're bothered about being over fat. And they're like, oh, what do you mean? I said, how did you know you put some weight on? Or my clothes are a bit tight, or whatever. I said, so your clothes are the indicator that something is going wrong. Why is it then that you now jump on the scales? I said, that's the equivalent of hearing a rattle in your car engine, and when you hear that, you get out the car and have a look in the boot to see what it is. You've got one symptom, but you look somewhere else for the answer. I said, so we're not measuring like for like here. I said, so what you really want is fat loss. And some clients will say to me, oh, well, I need to be a stone lighter. And I'm like, oh, I can't do that. And they're like, yeah, but you want to be an expert in this. I said, what I can do is I can get you into a dress size small. Is that any good to you? Oh, well, yeah, I'll bite your hand off kind of thing. So straight away, we've changed the language. If I change the language, that then allows me to explain you can only reduce your body fat roughly £1 to £2 a week, depending on how overweight you are, depending on how much you're willing effort to put in.
And
yeah,
long term.
And that's why it's the long term deal. You know, if you're 3 stone overweight, so that £42 a week. Well, there's a year, and it's like, oh, that's a whole different language to what the media would have you believe. And then they're like, well, why can't I do it quicker? And I was like, well, physiologically, that's not possible. I said, well, what about these people that lose £3 or £4? I said, if you're losing £3 or £4 a week, unless you're morbidly obese, and I mean morbidly obese, most probably extremely morbidly obese, you are not losing fat. You are losing water and you're losing lean tissue. And that's the last thing you want to lose is lean tissue, muscle, because actually the more lean tissue you carry, the more calories you burn. I said, I said, these programs like The Biggest Loser or that, if we were to call them The Biggest Fat Loser, they'd be very boring because everybody would be losing about the same. I said, so the whole glamour and glory would go out the window. I said, and I think we've been sold this weight thing for far too long. And so, although most of my clients, when they start with me, always want to be weighed, because that's the indicator they've been using, I wean them off of that. And I know if I'm doing okay when my clients start saying to me, I'm not bothered about weight, I'm just going to go with the measurements. Because that to me says, right, they're starting to get the message now. So it's another indicator that the penny is starting to drop.
So if you weighed 20 stone but you looked like Jennifer Lopez, would you care?
Would you be worried? Yeah. My undergraduate dissertation looked at what was the best form of exercise for weight loss. And so I had 12 women. They were all doing Slimming World. Now, I'm not going to either way about Slimming World. To me, it's healthy eating, very cleverly dressed up. But nonetheless, that's how we controlled the nutrition. And then I trained 6 of them aerobically. So I either went out power walking with them or I did step 1-to-1. And then 6 of them I trained with weights, resistance training. And when we did the random selection, the ones that got the weights were gutted because they were like, oh, I'm going to put muscles on, I'm going to get big. Because I think that's the perception with women, that that's what will happen. Anyway, at the end of the 6 weeks, the average weight loss across both groups was about 2 kilograms. It worked out at roughly about £1 a week. But when I looked at where the weight loss had come from, in my aerobically trained group, nearly all the weight loss had come from lean tissue and water, whereas in my resistance trained group, nearly all the weight loss had come from fat. And the most stark contrast was the change in body shape, because we didn't see a massive change in body shape in the aerobically training group, but the resistance training group, the average reduction across the group in their waist measurement was 9 centimetres in 6 weeks. And actually I measured one woman, and I think she'd had something like a 13 centimetre reduction, and I thought, I've measured this wrong, that cannot have happened in 6 weeks. And I actually said to her, I said, I'm awfully sorry, I must have measured you wrong at the start. And she went, no, she said, I've gone down about 3 dress sizes.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow.
But people's perception on the street is that the aerobic stuff, the spin classes, the Zumbas, are the things that are going to burn
Isn't that
fat.
how we sell it?
Yeah.
Fat burning classes.
Whereas actually it's resistance, which is weights. What else?
And that was my hypothesis, because it actually makes sense when you think it through, because I think we've had this big kind of argument in the leisure, and it still goes on to this day. Is this a fat burning exercise? Is this a fat burning exercise? And one question I always ask trainers is, right, what is the best exercise for fat loss? And I've done it in the room with this group I've just trained. 9 trainers in there, and they've all got their right. Oh, it's high intensity interval training. Oh, it's running, it's swimming, it's circuits, it's resistance. And so they all go around, they've all got this like quite fixed opinion. And I always say to them, I said, you're all wrong. And of course, I love the controversy. And they're like, ooh, what do you mean we're all wrong? I said, the answer to that question is the exercise your client will bloody well do and enjoy. I said, and there's the key thing, enjoy. I said, because kind of you're all right in terms of it's this, it's that, it's the other. I said, but the problem with that is your clients won't do it for very long. I said, whereas if my client is saying to me, yeah, but the best exercise for me is to walk my dog for 3 hours briskly. If I turn around and go, no, that's the wrong type of exercise, you don't want to be doing that. Well, you've missed the point somewhere. If he's really happy to do that and that's what he loves, let's do more of it then. And so on the lean system, and certainly within the research when we ran it, most of those guys in the research didn't do formal exercise. They just got active. We got them thinking about, right, where did you park your car today? Most people, when they drive out, and where have you parked yours today? Try to get us near the door, guarantee it, because it's human nature. Much as people go, no, I don't. It's like, yes, you do. It's like when you go to the supermarket, what do? You drive into the car, you try and get near the door. Everyone does. You'll even sit in the car and wait for somebody to come out of a parking space. I say to my clients, you drive into that car park, you turn left and right and you park, because that space is always available. You now walk across the car park. It takes you 2 minutes. What difference is 2 minutes going to make? Well, it's 2 minutes walking that way. When you come out, you leave your trolley at the door. You carry your bag, so now we've got load-bearing exercise. There's another 2 minutes. You're going to do that every week on week. Well, I've now added 52 times 5 minutes of exercise, however many minutes that is without doing the math. So if I can find 10 occasions in a day where I do that with you, suddenly you're doing 50 minutes of activity. And this is the client that's told me, I haven't got time. And so this is the key. It's like examining the lifestyle and going, get active. And you don't need to worry about, is it fat burning? Because if you're active, you're burning calories. And yes, in the actual, whilst you're doing it, regardless of what it is, you might not be burning fat. You might. It would depend on your fitness level, your intensity, your body type. There are a whole range of factors. The key thing is you are burning calories, and providing your energy in isn't kind of outstripping the calories out, then that energy has got to come from somewhere. And so the way your body kind of redresses the balance it changes your metabolic rate a little bit. But if it's a continuous thing, then it says, well, do you know what? This is happening all the time. I can't change my metabolic rate. I'm going to have to go to the fat stores and I'm going to get calories from there. And I know people will be screaming at the screen, oh, it's not as simple as calories in, calories out. And I totally agree. Because every client will burn different amounts of calories. Every client will react differently to different foods. And that's why diets don't work, because everyone's an individual. And people will say to me, yes, but I've done this with this client and that worked. And it's like, yeah, most probably did work for that client. Try it with your next client. And I bet it doesn't. I work with elite athletes, and I can put an elite athlete out on a program that does this, and I know it works because I did it with somebody else. And I've seen no result. And you're like, well, that's mad. It's the same training program. They're the same weight category. They're doing the same thing. Why am I not seeing the same result?
Different individual.
And that's it. And that's what we seem to have lost track of. We seem to want to take this blanket model and go, boosh, put that on, that works.
And you also said that men and women have an entirely different perception about weight loss.
I mean, language. Just your language alone is really important. If I say to most men, right, we're going to go on a diet, the first thing they'll say to me, I'm not giving that up. I'm not stopping eating that. That means I've got to restrict what I'm eating, doesn't it? So men definitely seem to associate diet with every negative aspect that can possibly be there. The word diet itself has been hijacked by the food industry anyway, and the diet industry, because actually if you look at diet, we're all on a diet. The different dictionary definition is what we eat. So maybe we should kind of get around that. But if I say to a woman, oh, I've got this great diet to help you lose weight or lose fat, they're like, yeah, great, what do I have to do? Because women view diet positively. They see it as something that gets them to where they want to be. So their language around weight loss, fat loss is very different to a man's language around weight loss, fat loss. Also, men are competitive, and that's not to say some women aren't, undoubtedly they are, but generally most men are very competitive, and so you can challenge them. And I found that if you put men in small groups, 2s and 3s, they'll support each other, which is quite interesting, 'cause the macho image seems to drop away after a couple of meetings once there's some trust. But they'll still be competitive. They'll still want to kind of be doing better. They'll still want to be doing more steps.
Can I get you some more?
No, we're fine.
No, we're fine, thanks.
Yeah, they still want to be doing like, well, you did 10,000 steps. Oh, well, I'm going to do 11 then. And so that competitive thing works in my favour because they're kind of bouncing off each other. Women won't tend to that. Women like big groups. I think they like the social side of it more than anything. If you look at the success of Slimming World, Weight Watchers, a lot of that, they've become their friends and everything else. And I think some of the weight loss thing has actually kind of got lost in the smoke and mirrors at the back there, because it's like, oh, I'm going to see such and such. We meet up every Thursday. So men don't buy into that at all. What was interesting coming out of the psychometric tests, however, was men really value peer support. Now, I'm sure if I ask most guys, right, if you're going to try and go on a weight loss program with me, how much is it going to be important that your mates support you or your wife support you? And I think most men will go, I can do it, I'm macho me, I don't need any of that, I'll do it, I'll sort it. The psychometric test showed that's not true. Nearly every time I've run it, even if I do it with personal trainers actually, when I'm training them how to do the tests, they nearly always value peer support and a supporting relationship. And so looking at the support network that's around guys is quite important. And I think that gets overlooked with men, because I think men perceive men as macho. They don't need it because they almost superimpose their own image of what a man is on the man. And women look up to a man thinking, oh yeah, he's self-reliant or whatever, he won't need much support. And actually the opposite is true. And so when I'm working with my male clients, it's one of the first questions I'll ask them is your wife going to be supportive, or your girlfriend, or your boyfriend for that matter, are they going to be supportive? Because if you're going to make some lifestyle changes, it's going to impact your partner or people around you, even your peer group. You know, if you're going out drinking and you're the big beer monster, and now suddenly you're like, no, actually I want to look after myself or whatever, that's going to be difficult unless your friends understand that that's what you're doing. And then generally, actually, I've found, I say to guys, tell your colleagues at work what you're doing. Ask them if they can kind of, you know, if they see me near the biscuit tin, slap my hand kind of thing. And actually, good mates will buy into that and go, yeah, I'll support you. But you've got to ask first. And I think that's quite a hard thing for a man to do. I think sometimes we kind of, this new age man, I'm not convinced he exists, actually. I think he's a media invention.
Okay, so tell us what the lean man system is and how it works.
Right. Hopefully it does what it says on the tin. Lifestyle education for activity and nutrition. So the key aspect, although you've obviously got my support and we're making these small changes as we go along, it's a 12-week program. And so every week you keep 3 food diaries, 3 activity diaries. Now there's a twofold purpose to that. Firstly, it's so as I can analyse, are you being active enough? What does your diet look like? And then we make adjustments accordingly. The other thing is, all the research evidence when I was doing my PhD suggests that a successful weight management program has to include self-monitoring. So it's actually quite an important aspect for the individual that they are aware of what they're doing. A big kind of buzzword now within weight management has become mindful eating. Being aware of what you're doing, what you put in your mouth. Very often we eat things and don't really think about it much. And so starting to become aware of that. Now if you're having to record everything you do, you'll be surprised how suddenly aware you become. And I'll often have clients say to me, I didn't realise I ate that much, or I didn't realise I did that at lunchtime. And it's not because I've stood over them, it's because they've had to write it down. So they're doing that on a weekly basis. And then I'm sitting down for an hour with them, going through everything, saying, well, what about if you change this? Or what about if we tried that? And then hopefully some of those changes stick and they follow those through in the program. So it's a slow process. It's almost like starting with a rough hewn block of wood, and hopefully by the end of the 12 weeks we've got a beautiful statue, theory being. The other key aspect though, the education aspect, there's a 12-week online learning program, and every week they have to complete a module of learning. And then at the consultation we'll go through what we've covered. Do you understand it? Anything you want clarifying? Because my goal is at the end of 12 weeks that they actually understand nutrition, that they're able to walk onto a garage forecourt and go, do you know what, that's not healthy for me. Oh, the amount of fat in that, that's actually too much fat. Or that's a good level of protein in that. They can read a food label. I think a lot of people just look at foods, see the shiny marketing image, whether it be low fat, good for you, heart health, whatever, and just take it at face value. Whereas actually if you can read a food label, you don't need any of that, because you can look at the food label and go, yeah, that's good for me, that's not. So education really important. And I think the other really important point, and again it came out of the research, was support. Most successful weight management programs include regular contact with the client, preferably 2 or 3 times a week. And so what I do on the Lean Man system, although we have the formal 1-hour consultation, I always text my clients at least 1 or 2 times during a week. I always send them an email or SMS, whatever their kind of preferred mode of contact. But one at the moment likes Facebook Messenger, so I use that. But it's like, I'm there. How are you doing? What are you up to? And I just keep. I get them to carry Fitbit, which is an accelerometer. It's a modern pedometer, effectively. And so they've got that as a recording method, so they know themselves what they're doing on a daily basis. I get the login to their Fitbit log online, so I can log in at any time and go, do you know what? You haven't done much today, and I'll send them a text. Get off your butt. Okay. And if you ever look on my website, one of the testimonials on there is from Clive, and I always call Clive my marketing manager now, because he stands up at meetings and goes, I did the Lean Man system, I loved it, blah, blah, blah. So he's the greatest kind of testimonial I've got. Yeah. But he described me as his conscience. He said, because he'd just about to be doing something and he'd get the text or a tweet and it's like, damn, he's still there.
Don't touch that.
So, yeah, and I think people need that for a while, and it just helps, on the odd day where they're thinking, oh, this is so hard, just to get an encouraging little message, just a couple of words, is enough to kind of, yeah, do you know what, I'm going to crack on with this. So I think that's a really important, the one-to-one support is very important. It does kind of raise an issue, though, because if we're going to deal with the obesity epidemic, we're not going to be able to support clients one-to-one. And that's something we need to think about, is if you want to deal with the masses, how are we going to do this? Because I know I can do it on a one-to-one basis. Could I extrapolate that up and work in groups of 20 or 30? Certainly with men, no. So it does raise a problem.
And you train personal trainers.
Yeah.
How many clients would a good personal trainer have on their books at any one time?
Hard to say, because it depends whether they're diversified, but I suppose the ideal ratio, they'd want to be training at least kind of 3, 4, 5 clients a day, and they might train that client 2 to 3 times a week. So you might be looking at the range of 30 odd clients, maybe, I suppose.
How many personal trainers are there in the UK?
I don't know what the number is. It must be a large amount, because the training companies are basically churning out a kind of group of trainers. Well, if you think this group I've just trained, they'll finish the end of March. But then if you then take that every other training organisation in the UK is doing the same thing, you've got all those trainers coming out onto the market on a regular basis. And somebody quoted me some figures that the industry had produced, that something like only kind of, I think it was 40 or 50%, something like that, don't kind of quote me on that, but it's in that area, we're still in the industry. My personal feeling is that, and they might count as being in the industry, or they do one Zumba class a week, so technically they're still in the industry, but are they earning a living from the industry? I don't know. I think just gut feeling would be it's a lot smaller percentage than that. I think the turnover's big.
There's certainly insufficient qualified, experienced trainers dealing with small numbers of people that overall. There's no way it's going to dent the obesity epidemic.
It's not going. The big problem is a lot of the trainers that are churned out, their nutrition knowledge isn't sufficient. They buy into too many of these magic fixes almost, instead of having a sound underpinning knowledge of nutrition. And so they're almost offering the same as most of your diet companies and that. So
what is the kind of standard of personal training out there right now? I mean, am I likely going to get someone who's young and inexperienced, or am I going to get someone who knows what they're doing? How would you rate
You'll get both.
You get both.
But I think the big thing that we've got in the UK that is subtly different to the US is, in the US generally people will ask what a trainer's qualifications are. In the UK we tend not to do that. We'll go into a gym, say, well, what equipment have you got? Whereas what we really should do is go into the gym and say, can you show me the qualifications and this is the key thing, experience of your trainers. Personally, if I was going to look for a trainer, go out onto the marketplace and buy a trainer, as it were, I'd want to see their qualifications. I'd also want to see testimonials from previous clients. And that's where a lot will fall down, because I think there's a lot of trainers out there that have actually got very little experience. And in terms of what's your success rate, where's your statistics that show how successful you are? And the better trainers have undoubtedly got that, but that's why they are the better trainers. But yeah, so you've got a very broad spectrum out there, I think. You've got some that have done these short courses, 4 to 6 weeks, but equally you'll have ones that are science graduates or whatever, so even the level of knowledge can be quite varied.
Okay. So, people know that they should be eating clean, people know they should be eating the right foods, people know they should be exercising more, but we know for a fact that the vast majority of the population aren't doing that.
Yeah.
Shock tactics and decayed lungs and various other things doesn't seem to motivate people enough to scare them into action. We've already talked about you can now measure whether someone's ready to commit and in a position where if they do implement a plan, there's a good likelihood that it's going to work for them or not.
Yeah.
The ones who or not can go away and be educated and hopefully reach that point of contemplation where, I'm ready to commit to that, and they're off and running. What do you see as the future? Where's it going? Where's the state of the nation going health-wise?
Downhill rapidly. If you were to believe the data that's coming out of the States in terms of their predictions for obesity, and more importantly comorbidity diabetes, it's quite frightening in terms of the numbers, because if that is the way that things are going to go, and we're talking about doubling by kind of 2050 or whatever, to a point where 60 or 2/3 of the population will be obese, and we've already got 2/3 of the population overweight or obese, but they are saying that will eventually become 2/3 of the population obese, then the cost to the NHS, it will cripple the NHS, because we couldn't afford the drugs, the treatments and everything else that's going to go along with that, because unfortunately with obesity comes coronary heart disease, diabetes, stroke, time off work. I mean, that's often overlooked. Just like, hang on, people aren't very productive then as well. So it's not just illness, it's how it affects our economy. And I think that often gets overlooked. And I think sometimes when the government are thinking about how are we going to deal with the obesity, and they keep paying lip service to it, let's face it, and they keep kowtowing to the food industry, and the food industry's job is to sell us food, I don't care what they say. And when you've got government ministers saying, well, we'll listen to the food industry because they'll self-regulate, I'm sorry, poacher doesn't turn gamekeeper. That's not going to happen. And you only have to look at the past 10 years to see, is that likely to happen? Well, it hasn't happened so far, and that's not by accident. They've had plenty of chance to make the change, and meanwhile, the obesity train's gathering momentum. So we're in a bad place, and we really need to stop it now. But when you look around and think, well, what actions are being taken? We're not taking the right actions.
But one size does not fit all. The general
Nope.
programs probably aren't going to suit everybody. So it's an individual decision.
Yep.
It's an individual bespoke program that people need.
I think so, yeah.
And you're confident that you've got a model that works.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So if someone's been watching this, listen to this, and they're interested in learning more, how would somebody get in touch with you? Where should they go? Is there a website they can go to? What do they do?
Yeah, if you go to www.leanmansystem.com, the various systems are there. So you've got the full Lean Man system, you've got Lean Fit, which is designed for the athlete that wants to get a bit fitter, or the trainer that wants to get a bit fitter. You've got the Lean Report, which is the equivalent of a nutrition MOT. And then there's information on the website about training, the advanced nutrition course. I also run Nutritional Academy, for the price of a cup of coffee every month, £3, so it's a giveaway. You've got access to articles in there. There's a forum in there that I feed into. You've actually got access to me if you've got clients or you've got questions about your own weight or whatever. You can feed them through to me, and I'll kind of give you advice on where to go with that. So I feel that's a really useful resource for trainers and for clients, actually. And then I do an advanced nutrition course, which is, it's a level 4 course for trainers that they'll understand level 4, but it's Register of Exercise Professionals. And there's different kind of levels of qualification. If you're at level 3, that's personal trainer level. Level 4 is advanced personal training. Well, the advanced nutrition course is at that advanced level. It talks through all aspects of weight management and supplementation as well. And trainers can come along and do that. That course is one of the few courses that's accredited by the Nutrition Society and the Register of Exercise Professionals. I also do a 1-day behaviour change course, and that teaches trainers how to run these psychometric tests. So if they do want to start finding out, is my client ready, this 1-day course will give them the tools to do that. And that's actually accredited, again, with reps and with the Association for Nutrition.
Fantastic. So there is hope.
Oh, there's definitely hope. And I've thought for a long time, one of the things that came out of my thesis was we should use this training modality to train up practice nurses, people like that, so as they could start to run the program within a practice, because you don't have to have a degree to run this, but you do have to understand what's involved. And I think with my support behind it, it will definitely work, because we've proved we can do it, because the trainers ran my research for me. I didn't go out there and do the work in my PhD. That was personal trainers just following my guidance, really.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've learned a heck of a lot in a small space of time. I love the idea of parking my car as far away from the door as possible.
But will you do it, is the question.
That's so